This is part 6 of the series of tutorials for our app, which I called City Spell. By the end of part 5, which was also the second one in stage 2, so we're approaching the end of stage 2. This is the third one in stage 2, so overall the sixth one in the whole app and the third one of stage 2. We got to step 21, and hopefully what you did between watching the end of the previous part and beginning this one is to do what step 21 says, to open my prefabs, to find the prefab we created a few steps ago called Single Treasure, add a script to it called Single Treasure Script, spelled exactly like that, capital S-T and S, and it's saved in the scripts folder, and it's attached to, of course, the prefab called Single Treasure, and replace the shellcode, and instead you have typed this. So I'm ready to explain it. So what we have is I opened the prefab Single Treasure, and it has all the things it had before, but now it also has a Single Treasure script, and I replaced the default code with this code. Let's see what that script does. That's a script that every one of the treasures have. To remind you, the treasure is really made out of, and this is very typical of two main containers, two main children. The one that's usually seen, let's get close to it, and that's the gem with its the big beam that comes out of it, and so on, and the gem itself. I'm turning things around. So it's got the gem, it's got that big beam that comes out of it, it's got that effect, which we call, it's called frame ball. This is what we're going to see while we're looking for it. Then, once it's found, it's going to indicate that something collided with its sphere collider, and it's going to turn off the gem, or destroy or turn off the gem, and instead turn on the vanish container. And the vanish container has the effect called Energy Blast, which of course also has a sound. The vanish container has its own sound, which plays as soon as it's being awakened. So at first, of course, the gem is enabled and the vanish container is disabled. In addition to this job, the job of the script will be to also update the app manager, the application data class, that one more treasure has been found. And one more little thing, if you remember, the sphere collider belongs to the parent, and we want that sphere collider to disappear, or otherwise we will bump into what looks to us like an empty object. So this also needs to be disabled. And that's exactly the job of the script. Now let's explain how it does it. So this is the script of each single treasure. It starts by defining 1, 2, 3 public fields. One game object, which is the gem, so it knows what to turn off when it's being found. Another one is my vanish, so it knows what to turn on when it's found. The other one is public collider, parent collider, the collider of the entire treasure, to turn off when it's found. And finally, a private boolean, was I found, which of course starts as being false, and when it is found, when there's a collision, it turns into true, and then we know that one more treasure was found. So on start, all we take care of is to say that the boolean, was I found, is false. At the beginning, it's not found. It's just there. And then on update, which of course, don't forget update with a capital U, start with a capital S, which means, of course, 72 times a frame. What it does also, and I forgot to mention that, is one more little effect. Every frame, it rotates itself. Vector 3 up is a shorthand for rotating around the y-axis, in other words, like a door. Now, 40 times delta time makes it rotate once every 40 frames. So it gives it some kind of like a rotation. If you remember, we built also spotlights into it. So if I look at it from above, with the spotlights, Let's see if we can find one in the scene that will be easier to look at, like single treasure. This one, I'm going to get close to it. And when we play, the script makes it rotate, and it also, if you can see, it makes those lights around it rotate with it to kind of like a police car. Why is it rotating? And rotating to make it look alive, but also when the lights are rotating, they're shining on the buildings around it. So when we're looking for a treasure and from afar we can see like lights beaming and moving, we know there's a treasure nearby, kind of like a little clue. So this is the only job of the function update. The rest of it is on trigger enter. Now, again, it's not on collision enter, because on collision usually is for moving things around, like, bumping something with a stick. All we want is to indicate that something touched, but we don't want it to move. So this is why we're using the function on trigger enter, which hinges on the fact that both objects, the wand and the treasure, have a collider, that at least one of them has a rigid body, which is in this case the treasure. It has a rigid body, but also the collider has been set on at least on one of them to trigger, not to both. So on the wand, if I open the wand, its box collider has been set to is trigger, and that enables me to use the function on trigger enter. If all of those conditions are not met, both objects have a collider, at least one of them has a rigid body, and at least one of them, its collider is set to on trigger enter, this function will not work. But if we meet all those conditions, it works. So it asks, okay, so there was a trigger. First question is, who bumped into me? Who bumped is the object that caused the collision or the trigger. If whobumped.gameObject, the compare tag wand, is it the wand that touched me? Remember, it's the treasure asking. And was I found false? We need this so we don't touch it like, twice and get really quick over like 2 frames and get 2 points. So on the very first touch, it will turn from false to true, and it will not trigger it to say found over and over and over, only once. Then if it was once found, there's 3 things to do. Number 1, my gem.gameObject set active false, make the gem disappear. My vanish.gameObject.set active true, make that vanish effect appear, which will also play the sound, but also find its parent, which is the container for the whole treasure, and enabled false, and to turn off the collider, so we can run through that space from now on as if it never existed. And last but not least, tell application data to it has a variable called treasures found to up it by 1, to increment it by 1. You can see from the time that I developed this that I have a print, and to see if it did bump or not, little indications in the console. But the best indication would be to do this. First of all, we need to populate, if we go back to this prefab and open the single treasure, in the single treasure script, there are 3 fields to populate, and it's very important. That's actually, I think, the next part in the tutorial, is telling us to do this. In the inspector of single treasure, there are 3 things to populate. First of all, we need to populate gem as my gem and this disabled vanish container as the vanish container, but also single treasure, the parent of them, so it knows who its parent is. So let's do all of those things. So if I go back here and I go to the script, my gem, not any child of it, but the entire gem will be my gem. The entire vanish container will be my vanish, and the single treasure will be the parent. I can also drag it from here, would have worked too. So it knows whose sphere collider to disable when it's found. One way to test that would be to go back to the scene And this is one of the reasons that I left one of the treasures pretty close to where I am, so it's, pretty close to test it. So I'm going to do something like this. I'm going to go, okay, what if I grab the OVR player controller, which of course holds the wand. Here's my wand. Here's my wand. And what if I play? And while I play, I'm going to take the OVR player controller and deliberately move it so it touches the treasure. Great. Not only did it touch the treasure and made the vanish, here it is, single treasure 1, gem disabled, vanish container enabled, but if I look at the wand really closely, move it up and move it sideways, it should, actually we haven't written that script yet for the gem indicator. In the next script we do, it'll actually make it show that we caught one gem. So I'm going to stop, which brings everything back into place. So once we've done that, don't forget the vanish container itself should be turned off. So if I go back to single treasure, vanish container is populated in the script, but initially it's off. And when the treasure is caught, it will be enabled. Next in the tutorial is one more script, which is why we didn't see what I thought we would see, because we haven't written that script yet. We're going to open the OVR player controller until we find my wand 7, and finally the wand needs a script, and it's going to be called my wand script. And as usual, you can create it separately and just attach it to it, or find the find wand 7 and add component. Did I call it my wand 7 or wand 7? Doesn't matter. Because there's only one wand. And I already have the script. It's called my wand script. So what I can do is simply, in this case, since I have it already written, I'm dragging it to be a component in wand 7. Of course, what you could do is just click add component. What it will have inside is a place for indicating who are the 5 gems to be turned on. This is a pretty simple script. Of course, I'm going to open it. My wand script. It's only like 30 lines long, and a lot of it is very repetitious. I'm assuming that you are pausing the video right now. Remember, this is a script attached to wand 7 or my wand 7. And make sure that its exact name is my wand script with the capitalization and everything. You're going to replace the code with, 30-something lines with the code in the screenshot. And if you're back, that means you already typed it. Let's go over it and see what it does. So it tells the wand which gems to turn off. Remember, they're initially to turn on. Remember, initially all of them are off. First of all, it declares 5 public objects, gem indicator 1 through 5. So even before we finish the script, I'm going to go and populate it. I'm going to tell Mr. Wand 7, hey, if I open it and I can see the gem indicator container, all of these should be disabled, then gem 1 will be gem 1, gem 2 will be gem 2. Let me scroll down so I can see all of them, carefully dragging each one of them in its place. In other words, telling it who to make visible once it's found. The rest of the script is pretty simple. It basically asks, how many have I found? Update, 72 times a second. Switch, remember, is just like a condensed if statement. It's asking, hey, please look at application data and ask it how many treasures were found. In case 1 was found, gem indicator 1 will be set to true and will show up. Break is to make sure that case 1 is over. Don't forget that this is a regular colon and not a semicolon. This is a semicolon. Case 2, In other words, if two gem indicators were found, set the second one active, and if three, set the third one active, fourth one active, and so on. What does that mean? That until any one of them is found, in other words, unless it's one or two or three or four or five, none of them will be on. So now that we have this script, I can do the same kind of testing that I did before. Say, okay, let's see now. If I go back to wand 1, look at it from above. If I play, if I take my entire OVR player controller with a move tool and I move it so it finds the gem and get a nice sound, it also, gem indicator number 1 became active because I caught one. And the same thing will happen when I catch the second treasure and so on. So this is working. Let's see what else is left. Very little in this stage. We already did step number 24. We populated all those gem indicators so it knows what to turn on if I found one, what to turn on if I found two, and so on. Initially, all the gem indicators are off, and that's the end of stage 2. So before I stop the tutorial, I'm reminding you that if it's the end of stage 2, you need to submit your lab. If your zip is bigger than 2 gigabytes, then of course you can always take out the library folder. I usually take it out first before I delete it, and to zip again, and then you zip again. It should be less than 2 gigabytes, and submit it by the due date indicated in your course shell. I will see you in the next stage, which will be stage 3, where we finalize the game, and also the first tutorial in stage 3 will be the 7th one in the series.